by saying whoa, ain't gonna get you where you wanna go.
Hello Somerville, my name is Ed Halloran. Welcome to the Somerville Labor Show. The music you are hearing coming into the show here is by Joe Uehlein, and Uehlein is You Cannot Giddy Up by Saying Whoa. He's going to be a guest on this show. Joe's done many things. We'll be introducing him shortly. I want to say one thing before we begin this show, which is very, very important. We've had many shows on here with many, many different topics. And during our conversations, one of the things that we have not talked about enough is climate change. And that has not been discussed enough. It is our good fortune to have a man on our show that I consider to be an expert in the field of labor and our environment, also known as climate change. My guest is Joseph Uehlein. He is the former Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO Industrial Union Department and former Director of the AFL-CIO Center for Strategic Campaigns. He is a founder and a board member of Sirius and a member of the National Advisory Board of the Union of Concerned Scientists. He is now organizing and has organized a labor network for sustainability dedicated to rallying trade unionists for economic, social, and environmental sustainability. Founding president of Labor Network for Sustainability and Voices for Sustainable Future. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
You came all the way from Tacoma Park, Maryland.
Yep.
You flew here to be on this show.
Yep.
This is serious for us. You know that, right?
Me too.
We really appreciate this, man. This is great. You are here in Somerville.
Yeah.
In its full glory.
I love it.
With all of its construction and everything else that's going on. It's going to be fantastic. So my first question is that you were raised in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
And you were raised along the banks of Lake Erie.
Mm-hmm.
And you were raised in a union town.
Right.
Can you give us some feedback on what your experience was in a union household back then?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was a steelworker family, and everybody in the neighborhood worked in the steel mills or the auto plants. Our whole life revolved around the local union that my dad came out of, which was in Lorain, Ohio, Steelworker Local 1104. And he was a founder of that local, a founder of the CIO in the 30s in Lorain. But, you know, all the softball games, the summer picnics, the holiday parties, the local union hall was our life. So that, you know, growing up, you know, looking at the smoke coming out of the smokestacks meant bread on the table for us. Mm-hmm. We didn't think much of it. We loved the lake. We swam in it all the time. We fished in it year-round, including in the winter. Back then, people don't do it anymore because of climate change, but you drive your pickup truck out on the lake, drill a hole and fish. So we'd eat those yellow perch by the hundreds and hundreds. And then, of course, that all stopped because of pollution in the lake, climate change, global warming, but that was my upbringing, and I cherish it.
It kind of reminds me of the Charles River. Mm-hmm. Years ago on Magazine Beach, my family swam in those waters. Uh-huh. My grandfather would fish there.
Yeah.
Catch a lot of eel.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
But couldn't do anything with it anymore.
Yeah.
Completely polluted.
Right.
And then what happened was ex-governor William Weld jumped in the water, and it was all history from there. We don't know what happened after that. So how did your labor career begin? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, my family had moved from Ohio to Pennsylvania, and I went to work in an aluminum mill. I was actually still in high school, and I worked the 4 to 11:30 shift. So I left high school, hightailed it to the mill, went to work, and so I was in the Steelworkers Union there in that mill. And one really important event happened when we struck. It was a strike over grievances, which you could do back in those days. Mm-hmm. You can't anymore. But everything got settled except I was a probationary employee. And so they wouldn't hire me back. And the local union would not settle until they agreed to hire back me as a probationary employee. That taught me an important lesson in solidarity.
That's quite a tribute.
Yeah.
They must have thought very highly of you.
Well, they did, and I of them, but just the fact that, you know, I was a kid, and they were holding out and said, no, he's got to come back too. And that taught me a lesson about solidarity that I'll never forget.
Was there something else that occurred? I know, look, I've done some history and some feedback that I got that you have about the little tagline that you weren't too happy about being hungry and out of work.
Oh, yes.
You got a little story about that?
So after I left the mill, I got a job in heavy and highway construction. I joined the laborers union.
Okay.
And that was great work. And one of my first assignments was the construction of the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant. And, which became famous for a meltdown some years after I was working on the construction there. But there were environmental groups that didn't want to see the nuclear power plant built. So every day I went to work, I crossed a picket line of the environmental groups. I took their leaflets, they made sense. To me, my local union had a bumper sticker that said, "Hungry and out of work, eat an environmentalist." And I objected to that, and I went down to the local union hall and said, this is a little over the top, they make some good points. But that didn't go over so well at the laborers local there in central Pennsylvania. And one thing led to another, and I ended up getting an organizing job and started a career as a trade union organizer. But that was an object lesson for me, the way the local union treated environmentalists, right. Which I thought was wrong. So as I went through my whole life as a trade unionist, I went through it with environmental sensibilities based on both the Lake Erie experience and the 3 Mile Island.
At the bottom line, even when we discuss fossil fuel, the bottom line, even here, for us, we've had people come to us and say, look, you got to divest out of fossil fuel. And we're like, wait a minute, we've got pensions, we've got money tied up there.
Yeah.
And we're very concerned about the transition.
Right.
Where are we going from fossil fuel? How are we going to be getting there?
Yeah.
And that's what we're really concerned about.
Right.
And the answers that we were getting at that time really weren't what we were looking for.
Right.
And that may be the bottom line of what people are always looking for. And at some point in time, we have to really wake up a little bit to that. And I have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you get involved with the AFL-CIO from the get-go?
Yeah, well, I got a union organizing job with the industrial union department of the AFL-CIO, and I was organizing all throughout the South. And that, got me started. I mean, I spent 40 years doing work in the AFL-CIO family. The industrial union department was a separate financially and otherwise autonomous division. But that's what got me started, the organizing work, and one thing led to another, and I ended up being elected secretary-treasurer, as you said in the intro, of that division. Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about your organizing a little bit when we get a little bit further into it here. So it's kind of funny, when I was preparing for this, I said we have Labor Joe, Environmentalist Joe. So now we're going to talk a little bit Environmentalist Joe here, because it goes hand in hand.
Sure.
And I think that labor and the environment is something that people have to wake up to. And I think you've said that on many occasions. So recently we have witnessed the massive destruction, Hurricane Dorian, for one, which is really devastating. Out of control fires in the Amazon. We have California wildfires. I was down the Cape and I got hit with a tornado.
Yeah, wow.
Down Cape Cod.
Wow.
Okay? And that was crazy.
Yeah.
So how far back can we go when you started saying, talking about climate change and why it was so, what really got you lathered up about the whole climate change thing?
Yeah.
And how far back?
Well, for me, 1988, when the UN, the United Nations, formed its first commission on global warming, I read about it, and I had not heard about global warming until then. Even though Lyndon Johnson gave a speech about it in 1965, I missed that. So in '88, I got myself appointed to that commission. And
yes, you did, because I have it right here.
And served on it for 15 years.
Yeah.
And that really opened my eyes to what global warming was and what climate change was going to be and where the science was going. And in the industrial division of the AFL-CIO, we represented the coal miners, the fossil fuel workers, manufacturing workers. And you know, so this was a wake-up call for me. I'm learning all this and thinking the people I represent are going to be in trouble, and that we need to be a part of this conversation.
So that was early on, as of '88.
88, yeah.
We're 40 years later.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we'll have to talk about where are we now.
Yes.
Yes. One thing, I want to give you a quick little plug here, because I know that you're the founding president of the for the Labor Network for Sustainability and Voices for Sustainable Future. So I want to run a video right now. It's about 2 minutes long, and it's workers and youth joined together for climate action.
Okay, good.
I have a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old.
I have a son also, he's 11.
They both participated in the last youth strike.
I said to my daughter, well, what's that? And she said, Mommy, well, you know climate change is coming.
So if he goes out on strike, I'll definitely be there.
My name is Micah.
And my name's Valerie.
We're in 7th grade.
The reason why we are here is because we want a future for our generation.
The young people are the ones who realize, like, hey, you gotta stop this train or you're going over the edge.
If we only have one planet, then we only have one chance.
There is a different energy leading this than the folks in the generations that came before.
These young people are talking about a future world that they're going to live in. And if we care about them and we care about the future, we have to respect what they're saying.
This change is coming anyway, with or without us.
This is not theoretical for our members.
I saw firsthand the disaster of Typhoon Haiyan. Workers die every year of heat stroke in the fields in California and in Texas.
Not an option for politicians to continue to play into the hands of the oil and gas companies.
A Green New Deal needs to change that relationship, and people are looking for, what can we change it to?
It is about not having this separation between workers and climate.
What made me get involved with climate action, because we had to create jobs, and there's many jobs that can be created when we get rid of fossil fuels.
If we're not part of the response to climate change, we're going to be left behind.
We have the end point, and I think now we're starting to speak, okay, how are we going to get there?
It is one of the greatest sources of optimism for me that the youth have taken on this issue.
We're not going to make the same mistakes that our great-grandparents did, that even our parents did.
I saw a sign today that said, our climate is changing, why aren't we?
They are relentless and they are fearless.
And they're taking initiative, and they need our support.
Joe, that was a really interesting video. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what's going to be going on there?
Yeah, well, the students are striking September 20th. Really, it's the 20th through the 27th, so there are 7 days of global strikes and support actions. The support actions are by the older folks, unions included, from all over the world, supporting the students who are striking because it is their future that they are losing.
So is striking no classes? What is the striking?
No classes,
no
yeah,
classes.
That's the strike. And,
okay.
and we've had to do some real explaining to them as to why labor people can't strike as freely. There's federal labor law, there are contract no strike clauses. But we have a toolkit on our website of all the things unions can do.
And we're going to do that. We're going to put that up too. So that way, during this show, we are going to put that. We're going to link that up so people can actually go to that link on there for the Labor Network for Sustainability. So let me tell you, what is it that the organizations? You can talk about both of them, or we can just talk about the one we're talking about right now, which is Labor Network. What is it that they've? How far have they come, and what are they doing today besides striking and everything else that's going on?
Right. Well, the Labor Network for Sustainability, our mission statement is very simple. It's making a living on a living planet. So we focus equally on both the importance for working people to earn family supporting wages and to have good union jobs with benefits, and on a planet that is thriving and alive, which we're losing. So we focus very equally on both. We don't compromise one for the other. And we have come in 12 years from, just starting this work where no unions were taking action on this, to where we are today, where unions are beginning to step up to the plate. There are major unions that have endorsed the Green New Deal. Yeah, they're waking up to it.
Well, you know what? It's jobs, jobs, and more jobs.
Yeah.
And as I said before, it's the bottom line.
Yeah.
But it's also what we're really concerned about, what's going to happen to our Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
Which brings me into, I'm going to throw all this at you, okay?
Sure.
And you can sum all this up if you want to. You can just think about it in your head. This came from some of the things I heard you say.
Yeah.
Fracking was exempted from the Clean Water Air Act by President Bush.
Yeah.
Why are people in denial? Lack of education, worried about their jobs, retirement, 401k, healthcare. Corporate corruption and utilities.
Yep.
Healthcare will go through big changes.
Yep.
There's also something kind of cool that we said California Union cannabis workers rising.
Right.
I saw that as well.
Yeah.
Which I think that's a visionary kind of a thing that you had been talking about years ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah, and it's not it wasn't just about the THC part of it. I get the whole thing.
Right.
Very cool. But summing that up with the fracking and the Clean Water Act, the exemption of that, can you kind of give us a little feel for what were you getting at with that whole thing?
Well, fracking, I mean, one, it is an extractive industry of a fossil fuel. So for something that we know we have to leave in the ground, fracking was a bad idea to begin with. The fact that it was polluting water tables and was an environmentally dangerous process made it even worse. But we're looking at people don't believe this can happen, but in 8 years, the fossil fuel economy will be over. And we need to be ready for that. And fracking is not the way.
When you say it'll be over, what exactly are you telling me? Are you telling me that there's only so much oil in the ground?
No, that is true, but that's not the reason. The reason it will end is because other forms of energy are cheaper. They're more economical, and they're also effective. Now, I mean, people don't want to believe that, but one thing I point people to is a 2007 cover of Forbes magazine, and it says, "Can anyone stop Nokia?" 2007. Now, Nokia at that time was the cell phone company.
Sure was.
Now here's Forbes. This is the brains of Wall Street. In 2008, 3 things happened. Number 1, Apple invented the iOS operating system. Number 2, they invented the iPhone, developed the iPhone. And 3, they went to retail sales, stores. They set up stores. So there's 3 things that came together: technology, product development, and product placement, that disrupted an entire communications world of economic activity. And in a year, can anyone stop Nokia? That was turned on its head in 1 year.
Wow.
So these economic disruptions will happen. We're in the middle of the greatest economic transition ever experienced, and we need to be ready for those things and get in on the front end of new emerging industries.
So when you mentioned about retirement, 401ks, and healthcare, how did you plug all that in as far as the effects that it's going to have?
Yeah, well, it gets to the divestment issue you raised a little earlier, because these stocks, the fossil fuel stocks, are going to tank. That's a bubble that is going to burst, and it's going to burst sooner rather than later. My pension plan is invested in fossil fuels, as almost every
municipal
pension plan is.
I work for the city of Somerville here, so all of us are.
And the reason that a trade unionist should wrap their head around divestment is for immediate self-interest preservation of the pension plan. It's also good for addressing climate change, but I talk to union people about it as these are our pensions on the line here, and this fossil fuel bubble is going to burst.
It does put the fear into them. In fact, I heard this on national TV. And I'm not going to get into this whole government presidential thing that's going on right now, because I think we're a little bit better than that on this show anyway.
Yeah.
But when people start talking about the bottom line and 401ks, and hey, you got to vote for me.
Yeah.
Because we get your 401ks, and we're putting the fear into people over these things and throwing people into a panic.
Right.
This country is a wonderful place.
Oh, yeah.
And we want to preserve it.
Yeah.
And I'm completely understanding of where we need to go with it right now.
Yeah.
And I'm here interviewing you, but I feel the passion, and I'm sure. How are you received by the younger people on this? How do they feel when you have your discussions with them?
Younger people are there.
Yeah.
They're out ahead. The fact that these high school students are striking, and this Swedish high school student, Greta Thunberg, is leading global strikes. She's an international rock star now. That is inspiring to me. When I talk with them, they get it. They don't get labor, which is really important for me,
the connection
to deliver to them the message that you need to keep working people's interests front and center in your work, or else they will fight you and you'll lose. So it's, I try to address self-interest for them, self-interest for workers, and bring it together.
Well, the Somerville Labor Coalition was approached by several young people about divesting out of fossil fuel.
Right.
And of course, listened attentively to what they had to say. They didn't really have everything that they needed at that particular point in time, but it did kind of raise the issue to where we began the thought process. Now we're thinking about it. Now we're thinking, how can we get out of it? How can we transition into something better? And you're right. I think we will start to see the stocks, really start to lose a lot of altitude.
Absolutely.
And I've got solar panels on my house, Joe. Okay, so been doing that for a long time now. So I'm very. That's what I think we need to be.
There are other stocks to go into. I mean, the cannabis stocks are doing great. I was just at an event the other night where a guy was telling me that a friend of his invested $7 million into the company that owns Impossible Burgers. The plant-based burgers.
I saw it.
And they just went public.
I love it.
His $7 million is now $300 million. Now only rich people, who has $7 million to invest? A rich person. This is a system rigged to help rich people no matter how you cut it. But my point is, there are other things to invest in that we should be looking at rather than looking back at fossil fuels. Let's look to the future, and our pension funds can make some money.
Well, you know what? I couldn't agree with you more on that one. What about the corporate corruptions in utilities that you had talked about before? What about that?
The entire utility system is corrupt and rigged. And it's complicated because it's big corporations, it's family-owned companies, there are even some co-ops in certain parts of the country, utility co-ops. But it's so corrupt. These public utility commissions are corrupt and are there to protect the old school, the fossil fuel paradigm.
Right.
So I think that whole thing needs to be turned over. We need to look at public ownership.
Yeah, I also think that they need to transition. Look at the tobacco companies.
Yeah.
They're transitioning. Right?
Yeah.
Everybody's transitioning. It's the way the world is. It's how it's evolving right now.
Right.
So they have to do that. And if they're not on the cutting edge sooner than later, then they're gonna get left out.
Exactly.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted. How about what kind of change do you think healthcare is going to go through?
Well, it's already going through a change that's moving toward home health care, for example. That's one. The other is, and I get this from my own doctor recently, it kind of blew me away, where, well, you don't have to come into the office now, let's do it via Zoom, or, and I'm like, I don't know, but that's where it's heading. They all have these portals now that you got to join and plug into. And
I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, well,
that happened with me.
But the home health care issue is a big one, and it's an opportunity for labor, and some unions are organizing home health care.
We are struggling mightily with health care.
Yeah.
And the cost is soaring constantly, in particular here in Massachusetts, so with the Group Insurance Commission. But they're trying to find a way to get themselves out of it, and you know, to benefit us and give us better health care. Single payer system, I've talked to many people about that. We're willing to take a look at just about anything, in my opinion, to see where we can go with something like that.
Me too.
Jude is giving me the little bit of a warning here, because what we're going to do is we're going to end this segment right now, and we're going to pick it up again. So I want to tell everybody, I want to thank you all very much. This is our first half hour of our special. Please tune in. You can also pick it up again on YouTube, on a Somerville Labor Show YouTube as well. So we're going to pause, and we'll come back for the second part. Thank you.
I'm glad you said that, because my colleague
talk about working on the other side of town. She sat down and looked at her hands. Sore and thick from a hard day at work. As if she was reading every line on those hands that raised